Call of Duty is one of my favorite franchises with a lot of fond memories since I've started playing COD 4 on the PS3. Before we begin, make sure to drop a like on this video as it helps the channel a lot and it is greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. It's time to go down memory lane. Let's see who's the worst and who's the best. Starting with number 13. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare is my least favorite Call of Duty ever. I think that's the only Call of Duty game I've ever spent more time on the campaign rather than the multiplayer. To me, the multiplayer felt like a terrible reskin of Black Ops 3 with none of the good things inside the game. Not even a single weapon felt right to me. I think I stopped playing the game after I reached level 20 online, which is the lowest I've ever been on a Call of Duty game ever. The game had a decent campaign that tried new things, including space jet battles and the protagonist being the top guy in his squad for the first time in the series as far as I can recall. And they had big names tied to this game, like Kit Harington and Conor McGregor, which were nice to run into in the game. Getting ground and pounded by Conor McGregor was actually a nice touch, even though it was somewhat contrived, considering he's a soldier with weapons to kill you instantly. Sadly, even Jon Snow and the Champ couldn't save the game for me, and this will forever be my least favorite and worst Call of Duty game. Number 12. Advanced Warfare. Advanced Warfare was the first Call of Duty game with boots off the ground, exploring a new movement system with the exoskeletons, which added several new features to the single player as well as the multiplayer. This was the bravest Call of Duty ever created in terms of changes, taking the game to the future and having Kevin Spacey in the campaign before all the controversy and at the height of House of Cards' popularity. One good thing that I'll give to this game is that it had brought us the timeless press F to pay respects meme, and that's all. This was the first Sledgehammer Games title that was led by them rather than supported, and I think that's why it felt not like a Call of Duty game at all for the most part. None of the weapons are memorable, neither was the story. They had a laser gun in the game which performed better if you had higher FPS, which is a weird unique fact to this game, and it's the first game to introduce a pay-to-win weapons mechanic in the form of loot boxes, which is always awful. Especially when it's a AAA title that you paid $60 to play. Even though it was a brave attempt, it was a poor one as well. The advanced movement left much to be desired and was later perfected in Treyarch games. Number 11. Call of Duty World War II. Call of Duty World War II is another Sledgehammer Games title that did poorly and wasn't very liked as a Call of Duty game. While it had some unique takes and ideas for a Call of Duty game, and it brought us back to boots on the ground in the series after a long while, people didn't appreciate the poor weapons choices you had, nor the very limited class perk options and attachments. As a guy who loved silencers on all of my setups, it was painful having the option to put them only on SMGs. The real kicker was that the last World War II game before this one was Call of Duty 5 World at War, and it had way more class options and weapon choices. Better maps too. And World at War was created 9 years before Call of Duty World War II. The real slap to the face that angered a lot of fans and me was when you saw how much time they put into making the loot box system addictive, giving you bonuses for opening the boxes in front of your friends on your social space, copied straight out of Destiny 1, and it was poorly implemented, especially since you were forced to go through that social space, which was very buggy when the game came out. It took the great menu designs that previous Call of Duty games had and straight up kicked it away, just so they could force you to watch loot boxes being opened. After a barrage of futuristic games from this series and other FPS titles, the world was craving for a good World War II game with the new improved graphics and capabilities of the current consoles and PCs. And this game kind of delivered and kinda didn't. The campaign was pretty decent. It could have been better, especially if they would have added the Pacific Theater and the Russian forces against Germany, which again was included in World at War, a game that came 9 years before this title. The War Mode Online was unique, fun, and almost gave a campaign feel to the game when you had those unique cutscenes at the beginning of the match, and depending on the result and section of the maps, you also had different ending cutscenes. The immersion, however, was quickly ruined when they decided to virtue signal and add playable black female soldiers in the German army from World War II. I don't think that's a demographic that has any significant presence in the Call of Duty community, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't one at World War II, especially in the German army. This game was a proof that while Sledgehammer games had nice ideas, they should never lead a Call of Duty title again. And you'll soon understand why, because we're moving on to number 10, Black Ops 4. Black Ops 4 is a decent game, and it was the first time Treyarch had 3 whole years to work on their game, and it sadly didn't show. Black Ops 4 was a good game by all measures, until Activision attacked, introducing to the game pay-to-win mechanics, which I'm happy to say I wasn't around to experience. I bounced out of the game before it happened luckily, and while I never experienced it, I know it was very annoying and a kick in the nuts. Drifter, who had always tried to be a voice of reason in the community, to the point of being accused as a shield for Activision, and had a ton of Call of Duty in-depth tips and tricks videos on his channel, was forced to boycott this game because it was so egregious. Even though Call of Duty was the most watched content on his channel, meaning that boycotting the series would have lost him a ton of potential earnings. Before that though, the game was pretty good and fun. I always wondered what a Battle Royale Call of Duty game would feel like, and I got my answer. I didn't like, however, the small team in this game and the attempt to make Call of Duty a hero shooter just like Overwatch, which is another Blizzard game. I think you're completely missing the essence of the game if you think Call of Duty is a hero shooter. I didn't get to play much of the zombies mode in Black Ops 4, but I know it was pretty decent from the feedback I heard about it from my friends. Remember that 3-year cycle that I told you about? That was largely enabled because Sledgehammer Games finally got their own Call of Duty title? Treyarch used most of these 3 years to create that Battle Royale mode, and they completely ditched the single player campaign for it, even though they had an extra year. I don't care what you say, the specialist tutorials were not a campaign mode. Black Ops 4 was a good game, but it was barely a Call of Duty game. In fact, it was more Overwatch than Call of Duty. Number 9. Black Ops 3. Black Ops 3 is probably one of my favorite non-Call of Duty game. No matter what you say to me, a Call of Duty game should always be boots on the ground. But I appreciate Treyarch for actually trying and for making the best out of the Advanced Movement system, which was a huge upgrade to the Advanced Warfare movement. Black Ops 3 was the first game to ever introduce a player-created protagonist to the series. While it was a novel idea, it was a very poor choice. This was probably the worst Call of Duty campaign ever in the series, to the point where it actually made me sigh in relief when the new Black Ops 4, having no campaign news, came out. If it was going to be as bad as Black Ops 3, they were better off without it, honestly. As far as the zombie mode goes, I played it, but I can't really remember most of it since I checked out after Black Ops 2 Zombies. Don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed the game and got a ton of playtime on it, especially compared to the other Advanced Movement games in the series. While it's not a Call of Duty game in my opinion, it really felt like one when you were actually on a roll. Despite all the Advanced Movement, I still appreciate Treyarch for making it as good as they can. So now we know forever that it was the premise of the game that we didn't like, rather than the execution. Number 8. Call of Duty Ghosts. I actually played Call of Duty Ghosts originally on the Xbox 360 and then bought it for the PS4 when it came out. This was the first Call of Duty title on the newest generation of consoles, which meant we were finally going to see the game uninhibited by the old consoles. One of the things that held Call of Duty back was the fact that besides COD 4, it was most popular on consoles, and one of the game's best selling points, which is weird to say nowadays, was 60 frames per second gameplay. This gave Call of Duty its smooth gameplay feel it always had compared to Battlefield's 30 frames per second. You would have thought that the new console would have brought the series to a whole new level, but instead we got the Battlefield's Levolution's half-retarded brother in the form of a log bridge and a tactical nuke changing the whole map, which by the way you could have gotten from a care package. Don't get me wrong, I like the idea of care packages bringing you unique killstreak that is tied solely to the map, like being able to play Michael Myers. It was a nice touch that made the game very unique and fun, but that's not what Call of Duty needed to get back on top. For me, it feels like the entire premise of the game was based on the fact that Infinity Ward new players loved Sergeant Riley from Modern Warfare 2 and decided to make a whole game based around a stupid mask that was only cool because of the character wearing it rather than how it looks. That's why you can see some of the scenes in-game actually being a reskin from previous campaigns, which was just lazy. It's hardly a compelling or a fun story, and you know it because nobody cared for a sequel even though the story ended on a stupid cliffhanger. Despite that, I still enjoyed Call of Duty Ghosts. The multiplayer was actually a ton of fun and I got to play a lot of costume games in my local community, which I guess made the game better for me. While a lot of people didn't like the game, I still found myself enjoying it because I did well consistently and got a ton of great gameplay videos from it, with a variety of weapons in the game, which is always nice. This is the first Call of Duty game to introduce female playable characters, and back then I didn't reflexively hate it because it hasn't shoved itself down our throats and made more sense in a guerrilla warfare situation which the game was based on. The game also introduced some passive XP thing where you can create a squad and have it fight another player's squad, and it was very forgettable. Props to them for actually trying something new, but it wasn't anything but a novelty. Number 7. Modern Warfare 3. Modern Warfare 3 for a lot of players was when the series started dying down. It still was a good game, it still had record sales, it still ruled YouTube for the most part, but it started getting repetitive. Looking back at Modern Warfare 3, it's more like Modern Warfare 2.5. It was the much needed balance patch to a lot of the crazy things you had in Modern Warfare 2, like one-man army infinite noob tubes with danger close and tactical knife commando, amongst many other OP things you had in Modern Warfare 2. Modern Warfare 3 felt like a slightly improved reskin of Modern Warfare 2 in terms of the multiplayer, minus the grade E detection you had in Modern Warfare 2. Despite it being the balance patch to Modern Warfare 2, it still kept some of the worst features in my opinion. Remember good old Bobby Bowling, the community manager, saying,
"No last stand. Fuck you, last stand."
Which was a perk that people really hated from Black Ops 1. He also forgot to mention, however, that a more powerful version of this perk will come back to Modern Warfare 3 in the form of Final Stand, where you can use your primary weapon and get back up eventually if you survive long enough. Or Dead Man's Hands, where you became a crawling tactical nuke, and many more death streaks, which is a terrible game mechanic. Stop rewarding bad players. This game was the first to introduce two new sets of kill streaks, in the form of perks and support kill streaks, giving you the ability to keep your streak going even when you die, so you can get, for the most part, support streaks that were mostly non-lethal. And that would have helped you in terms of supporting your teammates in order to play the objective. Speaking of play the objective, this is the first Call of Duty that actually rewarded you with kill streaks for playing the objective. Before that, Call of Duty games would simply give you nothing but XP. In Modern Warfare 3, the objective was finally counted towards your kill streak, which is a great welcomed change. Not only is capturing a B flag is very hard and dangerous, but taking it alone is at least worth 2 kills in my opinion. This was a blessed change compared to the past, where players would go into objective-based modes like domination and just farm for kills. Like I said before, despite it being the multiplayer patch Modern Warfare 2 really needed, we still had a ton of OP weapons like the FMG9 Akimbos, which were the best way to kill a juggernaut even when you compare it to explosives or high caliber weapons. MW3 multiplayer was far from perfect, but it was great and it introduced a ton of fun game modes into the series like Kill Confirmed and Infected. Moving away from the multiplayer, the game had a solid campaign to conclude the Modern Warfare series and a decent co-op mode that was fun to play around with, giving you the survival mode which was Infinity Ward's Zombies equivalent, as well as the traditional Spec Ops mode from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. The thing that finally drove the point home that Modern Warfare 3 was actually Modern Warfare 2.5 for me was the fact that I completely forgot putting this game into the list and only added it retroactively after I have made most of it. Number 6. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. Despite it being a reboot to a game that was already remastered, this game is a true return to form for this franchise. I love the fact that they ditched the anti-consumer loot box crap and they actually give us free DLCs in the forms of weapons, and maps with a battle pass system similar to Fortnite, which is a bitter pill that I can swallow. This is Activision on their best behavior, and it's something that you rarely see. I still hate the fact that the PS4 version has the exclusive survival mode, and it almost ruins all the goodwill that they have garnered from all the free DLCs they've released so far. Starting off with the campaign, which was a good example of diversity done right. Usually when you have such diverse cast of characters, it's there for the sake of virtue signaling and to the detriment of the story, but it's not the case with this game. I love the new gas, and I really enjoyed this reboot take of the Modern Warfare universe. It was actually well done, and it brought back the series to the roots in Call of Duty 4, where instead of being a one-man army, you are a single soldier facing this incredible terrorist threat, which is the hardest thing to deal with right now in real-life Modern Warfare. It feels like they took notes from the AC-130 mission and brought forth a campaign that doesn't glorify warfare but is actually a commentary against it, and you really feel it down to even the smallest things like the weapons animation and the art kicks you get when you shoot it. This Call of Duty is on the more realistic side. The attention to detail in this game is amazing, and almost akin to a milsim in a franchise that is mostly known for being an arcade shooter. This same attention to detail actually goes with you to the multiplayer section of the game, and I love it. You can see it, for example, in the door picking feature you have, where you can slowly open a door to a room and check your corners instead of rushing in guns blazing. And speaking of the multiplayer, I love the amounts of attachments you have to each weapon, and the novel fact that you can actually take a weapon and change it to a different one based on its platform. Take for example the AK-47, which you can then turn into the RPD machine gun or the AK-74U SMG. It's kind of annoying that it takes up the attachment slots that you could have used to improve the weapon because you change it to a different one, but it's still a nice touch that the gun enthusiasts would greatly appreciate. I also like the fact that the game starts off with a small cutscene where you go into the match in the form of deploying from a chopper or a vehicle, and it gives the multiplayer more of a character and the campaign feel to it, which is always nice. It's even more appreciated when you get the Battle Royale ending scenes or being dragged off to the Gulag. Speaking of Battle Royale, we finally got a free Battle Royale mode to play with our non-Call of Duty friends. It's a very unique take on Battle Royale, and I love the Gulag twist they added to it, which uses the gunfight mode from the multiplayer section of the game. The gunfight mode by itself was a great addition to the game, and it's even better when they incorporate it into their Battle Royale mode. This could have been the top Call of Duty on this list if it wasn't for many avoidable flaws that it has. The first one we already talked about, which was locking the entire game mode of survival mode for a year to non-PlayStation 4 players. Add on top of that the complete shit show that is Spec Ops in this game, which is terribly executed. They had one classic Spec Ops mission at launch, and the rest of it was the go there, get that, kill that awful operations that felt even more terrible because of the infinitely spawning enemies for contrived constant action to the point where it's literally unplayable. While other games use infinite spawning really well, like Doom Eternal, where it's much needed for you to chain the kills and replenish health, ammo and armor to deal with the bigger threats, in Modern Warfare it's just so you have constant action for no good reason. The amount of HP the Juggernaut has is ridiculous. They can take several missiles from a chopper gunner. This is where I finally drew the line, checked out of Spec Ops and completely written it off. It's amazing how such a cheap constant action tactic by the developers in the form of infinite spawn has completely ruined the entire game mode for me. And that, along with skill-based matchmaking turning the game into a sweatfest every time, combined with several balancing issues, is why the game is a solid 8 out of 10 instead of an amazing 9.5. Before we move on to number 5, make sure to drop a like on this video if you've stayed this far and subscribe to the channel, plus turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of the future videos. Number 5. Call of Duty World at War. Just like its number in the series, World at War is 5th on the list. I gotta admit though that when it originally came out, it felt like a World War II reskin of Call of Duty 4, but over the years I have grown to love the game and appreciate it more and more. It was the first playable co-op campaign in Call of Duty's history as far as I can remember. It had great weapon choices and a ton of options, including great maps and surprisingly a somewhat balanced addition of tanks into the game, which had their own unique create a class system with their own perks. It's amazing how this game had such good maps to the point where taking one nighttime map and giving it daylight resulted in a completely different experience. The graphics, the depressing color palette and the gore all added up to a great gritty experience that gave this game a feel that made me chill as a kid when I played it and appreciate its grittiness once I grew up and saw the actual lack of good World War II games in this genre. The campaign was top notch, taking you to every front in the war, all the while telling a great story and giving you small choices that would change the story if you give it enough attention. Take Chernov for example, when he writes about your actions on his diary, depending on the choices you make along the series. The campaign also brought us the famous Gary Oldman as Viktor Reznov, one of the best Call of Duty characters out there. And one of the last good things that this campaign had brought us was the actual Nazi zombies mode for the first time. The legendary game mode that we all know and love. What seemed like an afterthought fun secret mode at first was later improved on and perfected through future DLCs that revealed more and more of the story through Easter eggs and added several more fun mechanics like the Coca-Cola machine and Pack-a-Punch. Going into this video, I thought that COD 4 was the only game that was revolutionary, but World at War with its zombies mode has forever revolutionized the industry and permanently upgraded what we see and expect in a horde mode game. Number 4. Modern Warfare 2. Modern Warfare 2 is probably the most fun I have had playing a multiplayer and a single player campaign, period. That chase for the nuke that led me to start watching Call of Duty commentators on YouTube had largely contributed to the fun I had playing this game. Speaking of Call of Duty commentators, this game was best described by one of my favorite OG Call of Duty commentators, Only Use Me Blade, who said that Modern Warfare 2 is basically a kid putting every single ice cream flavor on a single cone. The game is balls to the wall, crazy Michael Bay action experience on cocaine, for good and for bad. The campaign was crazy constant action that kept you on the edge of your seat every time, filled with great cast of characters like Sergeant Riley Ghost and Captain McTavish, which were formerly known as Sergeant McTavish, the silent protagonist of this game's prequel. Don't forget the ballsy offensive mission No Russian, where you straight up shoot innocent civilians, and although it raises tons of huge plot holes, it's a great mission that no game can make in today's climate and even back then. The cutscenes in this game are great and the use of quotes from the game are straight up iconic instead of cliché.
History is written by the victor. History is filled with liars. If he lives and we die, his truth becomes written and ours is lost. Shepard will be a hero, because all you need to change the world is one good lie and a river of blood.
I know this game marks a bad transformation for this series that was previously toned down, but now it has a single soldier change the entire war all by himself, which has led us down the road to a hero shooter game like Black Ops 4, and this is a big misunderstanding of what Call of Duty is all about. In my opinion, this game in terms of story was the best one. The first time most players have played it, they were completely shocked by Shepard's betrayal, which you can actually see coming once you replay the game and take off the America is always the good guys glasses. For those of you that never played it, you now have the HD remastered version of this game, so it's the best time to actually pick it up and check it out. On top of the campaign, we got the OG Spec Ops mode, which was a nice addition. It gave you the option to play co-op with your friend in split screen or online, or to play alone in several scenarios based on the campaign, which were a lot of fun to play with on several difficulties, and you also had missions that were strictly designed for 2 players and was only playable by 2 players, which is a nice touch. It was a great bonus mode that added several hours of playtime into this game. Now let's talk multiplayer. I got this game a week early and dived into the multiplayer straight away. It added so much content compared to the previous Infinity Ward game, which by itself added a ton as well to the shooters genre alone. But Modern Warfare 2 was just as great. Remember having 3 killstreaks in COD 4? Well, how about 15 killstreaks where one of them ends the game in a nuclear blast? You had way more weapons attachments compared to the 4 picks you had in Call of Duty 4. The way you acquired them was even more personalized, like the holographic side being tied to kills with the red dot side, which was the more inferior side, at least in theory. This is the game that also added call signs and emblems, which were so much fun to collect, especially since they were tied to hard game challenges instead of just being a stupid animation you can buy from a loot box. They've also added progression to the perks, where completing a challenge with a certain perk gives you an upgraded version of it, which was very OP, but later on it was perfected by Treyarch in Black Ops 1. Secondary weapons got a huge upgrade and a buff where they only had one attachment previously in the form of silencers. They now gave them as much love as the primary weapons, giving you a ton of options like the akimbo, tactical knife, and even a holographic sight on a machine pistol. No matter how ridiculous and useless it would be to put it on the gun, it was still an option. They also moved the shotguns to the secondary category, which made them a viable pick rather than a novel one from the previous games. The nature of Modern Warfare 2, however, made it more than a viable pick. Even the worst weapons in this game were a good choice because almost everything in Modern Warfare 2 was overpowered to the point of almost having balance. You had infinite noob tubes which were godly, and even godlier when you had the Danger Close Pro version on. Not only did it make your noob tubes stronger, but also your kill streaks, making the path to the tactical nuke so much easier. You also had the UMP-45, which I think is possibly the best hybrid weapon in Call of Duty's history, maybe only contested by the extended max version of the MP40 from World at War. If you didn't like that choice, they also gave you faster infinite sprinting, together with the power to teleport to your target from what seemed like across the map back then when you used Commando. Get enough playtime on your sniper rifle and the pro version of Sleight of Hand and you can quickscope like no tomorrow. If you don't like knifing and still like close quarters, you can just take out the AA-12 and spam shotgun shots down the range. Or just take an akimbo version of a machine pistol with stopping power and boom, tons of DPS. Remember the regular score counter from COD 4? How about we upgrade it and tell you every single time you ruined somebody's streaks or avenge your death with accolades and special markers on the screen. All of this contributed to the crazy arcade shooter feel that Modern Warfare 2 brought to the table. And it was even more amplified by the greatest netcode in the history of gaming. Hit registration in this game was godly. A 2-bar connection on Modern Warfare 2 felt like a 3-bar connection and sometimes even 4-bar connection on other Call of Duty games. I can't tell if it was straight up great coding and optimization or just the fact that everything in this game was so OP. Sadly, this game was highly unbalanced and rarely received any patches, even though it had game-breaking bugs like the care package knifing one or the stupid mechanic that they had introduced to the series, which is the death streak, which should be removed from every game in the world ever. The one single thing that I hate the most in modern day gaming. While the intent was good so players can come back to the game and not get spawn trapped or straight up steamrolled, this mechanic has metamorphed down the line into the specialist ability, which is a strong kill streak you get passively for just standing there even if you died 10 times with 0 kills or objectives to your name. And this is that participation trophy culture that I hate so much in gaming right now. I'll say it again, stop rewarding bad players. The only silver lining coming out of the death streaks mechanic for me was the name to my favorite podcast, Painkiller Already. To sum it all up, Modern Warfare 2 is the crazy chick you dated once who would do anything sexually and was great in bed. She is hardly balanced nor marriage material, but she gave you some great memories and a ton of fun. Number 3. Black Ops 2. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 is just a solid game. It's fun, well balanced, and just great. That's the first Call of Duty I ever went Master Prestige in when I played it on the Xbox 360, and I even went as far as to get the diamond camo on all the SMGs. I think Black Ops 2 is the first Call of Duty game that I bought when I moved from the PS3 to the Xbox 360, and I was not disappointed. Like I said, the multiplayer was very enjoyable with a lot of good maps and great weapons. I love the MSMC and PDW, and Black Ops 2 is a great proof that you can take the game into a futuristic setting with iconic great weapons unlike Advanced Warfare. The Pick 10 system was interesting in allowing the player to have more options in terms of loadouts if you decide to give up on your perks or tactical grenade, for example, so you can get an extra attachment on your weapon, or give up your secondary entirely for another perk. Like I said before, I got to master Prestige and have a ton of playtime in this multiplayer, but I won't dive into it since I rather focus on the other parts of the game. So let's just sum it up as a great fun experience that was well balanced and some would call probably the best in the series. I wanna now move on to the other parts of the game. For me, Black Ops 2 is when the zombies mode peaked and died down. The maps that you got in the game without the DLCs were barely playable in my opinion. The new Grief game mode wasn't enjoyable enough to try it more than once and it was dead on arrival. It got better however once you bought the DLCs, which I did. The DLCs brought you grade A zombies maps with grade A zombies action. My favorite one was Mob of the Dead since I'm a big fan of the Italian mob genre. What made it so great was that they actually got famous voice actors to play the parts. You had Joe Pantoliano, who was mostly known from his role as Ralph on The Sopranos. You had Ches Palminteri from A Bronx Tale, Ray Liotta from Goodfellas, and Michael Madsen from movies like Donnie Brasco and Reservoir Dogs. The good part was the very fun new weapons, map designs, ton of Easter eggs, and even an ending which was a first to the zombies mode, but the bad part was that all this good fun, like the new weapons or even the perk or colas, which are very necessary to play the game and enjoy it, were hidden behind a ton of Easter eggs and tedious tasks that would have taken you 10 minutes at least just to set up the game to be enjoyable. Unlike the more simple map from Black Ops 1, which was Kino der Toten. You just need to get the power on to get to your perks and link the teleports in 20 seconds so you could have access to the Pack-a-Punch. The great thing about zombies back then was that it was damn casual fun with the option to do ridiculous hard to find Easter eggs to unravel the story. It went bad however when they ramped up the ridiculous Easter eggs and started to hide more and more basic things behind it. They've taken something as basic as Juggernaut, which was needed very much for you to enjoy the game and play it, and hidden it behind convoluted Easter eggs that require most sane people to watch a tutorial video on YouTube, which switched this game from a casual fun experience to a high investment chore. I think that's the only legitimate gripe that I have with this game, and that's why it's third for me instead of first on this list, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of Call of Duty players. Let's move on to the campaign. While I said Modern Warfare 2 had the best story, Black Ops 2 definitely had the best campaign mode in the series and possibly one of the top 10 campaigns of all time. The story was very enjoyable and implemented real life elements into it like YouTube and Jimmy Kimmel, which is always nice if you want to immerse people into the game. The best part about the campaign was the branching storyline. You had several choices in the game through several missions which would change the outcome of the story and lead to several different endings. Not only did you have choices, you also had side missions that you could completely ignore or partake in them, and if you successfully complete them, you will change the outcome and the ending as well. For the first time in a Call of Duty campaign, you could actually fail missions and go on with the story or fix it by completing side missions. This gave the campaign so much replayability, and your choices really mattered. Instead of the normal yellow brick road, you had several paths to take and to go through, resulting in several different endings and small details in these endings. Not only that, but you could also change your loadout from the recommended one to each mission, if you felt like exploring or just thought that your equipment would fit the mission better. The Black Ops 2 campaign being so great is the reason for me why the Black Ops 3 campaign felt so much worse, and the non-existing one in Black Ops 4 was an even more sad pill to swallow. It's really rare to see a game like Call of Duty make a campaign where your choices actually matter and affect the story. Props to Treyarch for making it. Number 2. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. This game deserves its own entire video because I can go on about it for an hour easy. This is the game that got me hooked on the series. The first time I played it was on a French copy of the game, which was given to me as a gift by a friend of the family who came back from France. Even when I couldn't understand a thing on the multiplayer or single player, it was super fun. I eventually got an English version to complete the campaign and fully understand the story. Starting off with the campaign, it had great storyline, brilliant pacing, the contrast between the marine missions, which are bombastic, full force, constant action compared to the smaller scale, slower paced and more surgical SAS missions was great. The game used its first person point of view in a great way to deliver a great story, which was admittedly lost on me and odd when I first saw it. The first mission you're an SAS guy raiding a ship, and then you're just a president being executed in a coup. If you wanna know more about the campaign, check out Racevic's video analyzing way better than I could ever do. I'm going to link it in the description as well as put a card on the YouTube video that you can click on to see. The campaign is a 10 out of 10 action-filled gameplay with perfect pacing and great cutscenes, as well as brave, shocking campaign missions that back at the day were even more controversial to make. Call of Duty's 4 success, however, was largely due to its very revolutionary multiplayer experience. In a world where most shooters like Counter-Strike were just about the current match you're in, COD 4 made you a soldier that progresses slowly from match to match by acquiring weapons mods when you get kills with the gun, new camos when you headshot people, and a perk system to create the perfect loadout for your playstyle. While the game had certain balance issues with 3x frag, stopping power M16, and Juggernaut, it was relatively balanced, but those perks were sometimes the only option you could have if you didn't want to play at a disadvantage. This is, however, was very forgivable considering what the game has brought forth and that the fact that it was the first iteration of the system. The system that forever revolutionized how FPS games were made and what we expect from them. The creator class system is now a staple of most games thanks a lot to COD 4, which first brought it into the mainstream attention. This game is legitimately a piece of gaming history and I love it the most out of all the Call of Duties because it was my first. Infinity Ward tried to take down Halo for a while and they even prototyped one of their projects as HK, an acronym for Halo Killer. Turns out that Modern Warfare was actually the real Halo Killer that eventually took the spot and got the franchise to where it is today. Now before we move on to number 1, I have several honorable mentions that I'd like to make. Modern Warfare Remastered, which is a perfect example of how to make a great remastered game and then ruin it completely with corporate greed. Call of Duty 1 and 2, which I have never played at all so I can't sincerely talk about, and Call of Duty 3, which I played for several minutes at a friend's house and never got to try it more than that. I know that it was very popular, however, on Xbox in terms of multiplayer, and I'm sure that if I've played it, I would have ranked it high in this list. Number 1. Black Ops 1. In my opinion, Black Ops 1 is objectively the best Call of Duty game out there. It had a great original premise that was a direct sequel to World at War. The campaign was great, and due to the premise of secret ops post-World War II through Cold War and Vietnam, the game was able to use a huge range of unique weapons and equipment. Beside a great premise, it had a very good multiplayer mode with the right amount of innovation, while keeping the game true to its form, grounded and feeling like it's Call of Duty. And I'd go as far to say that this game had the best zombies mode in the series with or without the DLC, giving you 2 fully fleshed out maps instead of the one divided into 3 by Black Ops 2, giving you the illusion of 4 maps, and you also had an Easter egg hidden mode named Dead Ops Arcade, which is a fun distraction to play around with. The zombies were great, innovative, fun, the right balance of Easter egg and red tape to reach your desired setup, and I loved the revitalized, remastered World at War zombies maps that were eventually brought back as DLC. This game had the best zombie mode out of all the series, and I have had the most fun and the most playtime when I was on it compared to the rest of the games in this franchise. Moving back to the campaign, beside the premise being really cool, we now had the first ever non-silent protagonist, Alex Mason, with an actual face. I would have preferred it any day over the create your own protagonist thing you had in Black Ops 3. Now I suggest you skip this part of the video if you've never played the Black Ops 1 campaign, because I highly recommend you play it, and move on to the Black Ops 2 campaign because I'm going to spoil the shit out of it now. So go to the timestamp you see now in this video on the screen if you don't want this game spoiled for you. The Black Ops 1 story was genius. because it took you to those CIA missions that everybody speculates about, the Pentagon, and a ton of other undercover ops that were eventually redacted from history. This game let you play through what most conspiracy theories speculate about. Not only that, but I also love the Shyamalan twist where you find out that Reznov was dead the whole time, which if you play the game again, you can sort of tell when you see none of your squad members interact with him but you. And he always appears out of nowhere. The game had balls when they made the campaign. Implicating Alex Mason might have actually had something to do with the JFK assassination, which is one of the most speculated conspiracy theories in the world. And that's the reason why I love this game so much. Moving on from the campaign, it's time to talk about the multiplayer, which was great. And before I start licking its ass, I want to mention the very few largest complaints about Black Ops 1 multiplayer. The first one was the lag that you had, which people theorized was related to the game's new theater mode that recorded every match in the game. But I think it was actually a combination of that and the fact that this game came after Modern Warfare 2, which had immaculate hit registration and really strong weapons, which led me to the second complaint. People felt like the time to kill was too slow without stopping power in this game. For me, I feel like it opened up, however, the second perk slot, which was a good move that was later on perfected in Modern Warfare 2, where every single weapon had quote-unquote stopping power damage built into it. In my opinion, Black Ops 1 had the most balanced multiplayer experience. The proof for it was the fact that Last Stand was the most hated perk in the game. That hatred towards that perk was what prompted the famous "Fuck Last Stand" statement by Robert Bowling. If you look back to the previous games, Last Stand was in Call of Duty 4, 5 and 6, and nobody complained about it until Black Ops 1. Sure, you could still argue that it was OP because it was overshadowed by even more OP things in the game like Akimbo 1887s, Extended Mags MP40s in World at War, and Juggernaut. But I honestly feel that it wasn't that bad, and rather than it being overshadowed, it was actually overemphasized because the game was so balanced. People also didn't like Ghost Pro in this game, which was the same as it was back in Call of Duty 4, when it was UAV jammer and it had no counter in the game, but people got more pissed about it because you couldn't see the player on the map no matter what, even if you got the 8 kill streak Blackbird. Like I said, Black Ops 1 was very innovative yet staying true to form. It toned down the crazy kill streak from Modern Warfare 2 but still make them viable and enjoyable. It didn't take you to space, nor did it make unique movement changes other than the Dolphin Dive, which was a great trolling tool and a way to nerf the famous drop shot from previous titles. First of all, the game introduced the theater mode that recorded all gameplay, letting you go back and see all the cool kills you got and upload small parts of the game back when recording console gameplay was hard and expensive and the Call of Duty commentary scene was booming. Not only that, but it was a great creative tool for montages and cinematic shots, as well as a learning tool which probably nobody used it that way, but even if it caused the lag in this game, I think the theater mode was a great addition that was well worth the lag for the most part. Your in-game character, which had been previously picked by your primary gun, meaning when you had a sniper on a woodland map you would have a ghillie suit, or when you had an LMG you were a bigger guy capable of actually carrying it. In Black Ops 1, however, your character was defined by your first perk. The Flak Jacket perk made your character look a bit beefy and padded, as you would expect from an anti-explosive guy. Your lightweight guy carrying very little equipment on him to justify his speed. The Ghost guy, who supposedly can't be seen from space by Blackbirds and by UAVs in the sky, was very well camouflaged. The pro perks, which were OP in Modern Warfare 2, were toned down and perfected in Black Ops 1, amplifying your playstyle rather than defining it. In terms of customization, you had purchasable attachments and camos, which meant you can get straight to business once you unlock a weapon, which also cost money but was blocked behind a level as well, just like it did in the previous games. They also introduced a currency system together with wager matches, which were a very fun game mode that you could risk your hard-earned money in them to get a larger payout, or lose it if you happen to be out of the money. And all of that without the ability to buy that currency with real money. What a crazy notion and a rare sight in today's gaming scene. Love or hate the fact that they moved the camos, which were once a bragging rights, since you needed to complete challenges in order to actually earn them, now you can just buy them and skip the entire process. I think that it's awesome, however, that they hid the prestigious gold camo behind the 15th prestige, which I think is something we only saw once in Call of Duty 4, where you actually get the golden Desert Eagle. But sadly, some of the gold camos were very underwhelming and disappointing, especially when you had to prestige so many times just to get there and eventually pay 50,000 Call of Duty credits for them. Thank you guys for those of you that watched up until here. Looking at the recording program, I have 3 hours of audio to go through and sift out all the failed recordings because English is not my native language. It's going to be hard, so if you enjoy this content, please drop a like on it. It is greatly appreciated. This is really hard to make and it took a lot of time just to record it, and now that I have to sit through and edit it, this will take several hours as well. And then to render it and upload it, which will take several hours as well. So I would greatly appreciate it if you drop a like on this video, maybe share it around. And if you want to see more high effort videos on this channel like this one, subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell so you won't miss them, and support me on Patreon so I can produce more and more of this content. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.